is featured. Let me play that for you. That might be the best way to. Hello, I'm Ganesh Mani, faculty at Carnegie Mellon. Last year, I served as the inaugural director of collaborative AI at the Tepper School of Business. Today, I share how we are preparing students for the future of global work through experiential learning and human-machine teaming. We call it practicing management science 2.0. Across CMU's global campuses, I teach a wide variety of project-based courses. The focus is always on learning by doing. Increasingly, we're exploring how to collaborate effectively in multi-human, multi-machine teams, which is the future. During the spring semester of 2025, we had 167 students working on 39 MSBA, Master of Science in Business Analytics, capstone projects. These projects connected students with real-world challenges from companies like Honda, Maersk, and Synchron. Events like the Data Nexus poster session at the end helped students showcase their work, refining their communication skills, and also getting recruited. One of my favorite courses is the AI and Emerging Economies course that I teach in the fall via Zoom to students across Africa, Pittsburgh, and Qatar. It's a multidisciplinary experience. Students work in global teams, apply tools like ChatGPT, and tackle case studies. It builds critical and creative thinking in them. You may have heard of vibe coding. Very similarly, we've built a vibe optimization framework using OpenAI and Pulp. OpenAI helps extract the skill requirements from the capstone project descriptions. The framework then allocates students to capstone teams based on their preferences and their self-reported skills. So it aligns skills with actually what the project demands, solving a mixed integer linear program with LLM guidance. And we're experimenting extensively with collective intelligence platforms like ThinkScape from Unanimous.ai, GPT-4o, and Swarm intelligence principles underlie the platform. Students deliberate and converge on decisions like asset allocation tailored to certain personas. It's a very powerful way to demonstrate reasoning, consensus building, and decision making, and how emerging tools make all this more efficient. We've also designed customizable case studies, like evaluating an AI data center investment in Colombia, an emerging economy. Students conduct net present value and IRR analysis with and without ChatGPT and reflect on financial and non-financial risks, for example, geopolitical risk. These cases reinforce quantum-mental thinking and real-world application. OpenAI allows us to create bespoke cases at scale. Our creative students are building great prototypes, a macroeconomic simulation using agents as part of an independent study. This was run by a second year then undergrad, a Langroid-powered research assistant developed during a team capstone. Langroid is an agentic framework from my colleague, Dr. Chalasani. The digital research assistant decomposes complex questions, searches academic resources, and generates structured reports. This is a glimpse into the future of agent-based learning and research. We've seen measurable impact in trials comparing GenAI-infused platforms like ThinkScape to traditional methods like whiteboard brainstorming, which doesn't work well for large groups. Students reported more efficient decision-making. They also said it improved their financial literacy. We told them this is more of a side effect. One capstone team partnered with Toys Electronics to analyze and improve gamified STEAM education. They built AI-driven tools for career guidance and mentorship using Azure OpenAI components. Our work is also influencing programs like the TIE.org Young Entrepreneurs Summer School, which was partly hosted at the Schwartz Center here at CMU. Students use ChatGPT personas for customer discovery and evaluating pricing decisions, bringing AI into entrepreneurial thinking and learning. Some very contemporary emerging topics to keep in mind: digital public infrastructure, without the tragedy of the commons, alternative data, AI's role in achieving the UN SDGs. These themes enrich our curriculum and broaden students' perspectives. There are a few supplementary slides here. I won't talk through all of them, but you can skim as they scroll. As we embrace Gen AI, we must also nurture critical thinking and responsible AI practices. We're reading less, writing less, and doing less arithmetic. So all three R's are arguably under attack, but we must think more deeply, more critically. Know what to ask, how to verify. As Confucius said, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. That's the heart of experiential learning. And in today's fast moving world, as the Red Queen said, it takes all the running you can do to stay in the same place. To get somewhere else, you must run twice as fast. With AI as our ally, we're helping students run faster and smarter. Thank you for your attention. I hope you found this useful. So that's my digital twin, but I'm here for you folks to, can I put something in the chat? There we go. So you can look at this video offline, because if you pause the video, you can see the slides and all that. I think I'm going to voice over a few of that right here. You've already seen this one, but the point I make is, human replica, a couple of people can get together in 9 months, you have a replica, right? Human complement, that's what we're looking for. What are machines good at that humans aren't good at? And that's what makes for a good teaming experience. So this is something from the Wall Street Journal. I think right around the time I did a similar webinar a few months ago, they said, this is how the Wall Street Journal readers, right? Which means these are white collar professionals. Typically, custom-made podcast notebook LM is something we cover in the first session with the students. In fact, I covered that for some of my undergraduate and graduate students today, had them upload like a resume or a PDF and, see what it says. It also generates a podcast out of it. Scheduling made easy using Airtable, ChatGPT. That's how they're using it. Medical assistants, checking work, using AI as an intern. This pediatric hospitalist was interesting. Letter of clinical necessity, right? Paperwork is one of the most annoying things that a lot of white collar folks have to do. Targeted pitch. This is Anthropic Claude sort of doing a survey based on all the chats they've gone through, which are sort of the where and how AI is used across the economy, drawn from real world usage data from Claude.ai. So you can see tutors, technical writers, computer programmers, they are sort of using it effectively. Coding is one area where it's been a good assistant and so on. So this is on their website. So it's sort of very interesting things going on. But what becomes important is critical thinking, maybe polishing the writing. You may get a first draft from the machine. You can add some creative things to it, do a second draft, finish up with a third draft, and then check the spelling and so on. So that iteration, either starting with the human or starting with the machine. And then it depends on maybe if it's something more structured, you want to start with the machine. If it's something more creative, maybe you want to start with the human. So who starts and who you finish with and so on are very interesting with respect to these use cases. So these are some past projects. One of them a couple of years ago started taking pictures of the banana to sort of forecast when it'll ripen, because this has implications. Bananas travel long distances, typically not refrigerated, etc., and they go bad pretty quickly, right? I think berries, as we know, go bad even more quickly sometimes. So it has food supply chain implications, volatility modeling. It could be the stock market. It could be sort of any event. It could be even some friction in the supply chain. Cancer and dementia prediction. A lot of my students have done that. There are some public domain data sets available. Climate change data explorations, chatbots in low resource languages. Now you can take the same query, do DeepSeek versus OpenAI GPT-5, you can do the same query in multiple languages, Chinese, Portuguese, English, and you will get slightly different responses. You will see some cultural biases and so on. So those all tend to be good projects for students to experience. One of the student groups did using RoboFlow, a car license plate recognition program this past summer. And these are some future ideas, prediction markets. The other day, I think we were looking at the prediction markets as the US Open final was going on. It was sort of very interesting, right? The first two um, sets told a very different story than sort of pre-game versus the third, fourth set, etc. And you could see prediction markets really tracking the US Open scores and so on. So very interesting data. Not that students should be putting money, but sometimes, if you put $1 in, you watch the markets more carefully. Google Trends, there's a lot of interesting data. You can search for what happened yesterday, um, a tragic event in which states, and what other words, keywords, guns, right? Politics, those sorts of words will be trending, violence in politics, and you can come up with some very interesting social science related conclusions based on the data or preliminary conclusions and so on. So we'll talk about visualization of interesting data sets. I think with my TA, we may get into some white coding examples, synthetic data and persona based exploration. So you can tell the chatbot play the role of a tough negotiator, an industrial buyer, a soccer mom, or a soccer parent looking to buy a certain vehicle, or deciding whether they should order DoorDash or cook at home, right? So, what is the value of time? You can come up with some very interesting applications, business plan generation, agentic AI, etc. Digital public infrastructure. Now, this is gathering momentum. I talked about it in that video. It's really things like GPS, Wikipedia, Hugging Face now. A lot of the payment stack in India is being ported over to other countries like Morocco, Philippines, etc., to make digital payments very efficient. So India, Sweden, etc., are countries where there's very little friction in terms of payments and so on. So we talk about how some of that ports over to the economy. This is the TSA checkpoint data in a normal time frame like 2023, 2024. Couple of million, 2.5 million are going through the checkpoint, which means they have a boarding pass, they're going to travel. That dipped down all the way to 100,000. I think there were a couple of days when it was even below 100,000. You know what this is? This is March, April 2020, COVID. So allows people to sort of critically think about, is there, one data stream that can be. And now, as this goes up to 3 million, that means the economy is strong, travel's picking up, and all of that. Likewise, on the right-hand side is night lights relative to open economies and sort of not so democratic countries. So night lights could be a proxy for GDP. There are some countries where they don't do the census. You don't believe the GDP numbers if it's not a democracy. Even in the US now, we've had debates about BLS numbers and so on, right? So this alternative data is becoming even more important. Can you use other data to check government numbers? And then the generating function also becomes very important. I think a year ago, President Macron in France said, "Hey, we got to start dimming the lights. Climate change. We don't, we can't be wasting energy." So if the generating function changes, then these sort of graphs have to be reinterpreted. So that again brings some critical thinking with respect to alternative data. This was something we had proposed. Actually, one of my students, Galani, was from CMU Africa. She just came to the US to get a PhD. How to sort of check the output of a generative model for cultural norms, for physics violations, and so on. You may have seen some videos of fluids. You say that's probably not the real world, right? Gravity is not being factored in properly and so on. This is a slightly older paper, AI and UN SDGs, very nuanced because AI consumes a lot of power, a lot of water. It's an acquaintance of mine who is now at the University of Michigan. Ricardo Vinuesa is the main author of the paper. This is combining collective intelligence with LLMs. If you have, we have 47 people on this call now, we could do something like a town hall. Not everybody will get heard, right? But if you divide and conquer into, say, 5 rooms, then you lose the connectivity across the rooms. But if you had like the Zoom breakout rooms, if you had sort of bot monitoring each room and then transmitting information across rooms, then it becomes very efficient. If you're making a project decision, somebody may be saying here they're worried about cost, in the other room they're worried about impact. So this can scale to thousands of people using LLMs plus collective intelligence, and they instrument it so you can see some consensus evolving and so on. So, what are some of the learning objectives of a program like this? It's creative and correct use of contemporary tools. AI, Gen AI especially, is not 4 plus 3 equals 7 technology. It's very nuanced, right? Even a simple query. I give this example. I don't want to get too much into geopolitics, but if you ask the question, is Taiwan a country, right? That becomes very nuanced, even for us, right? Depending on where we are talking, whether it's in a private setting, whether we are talking in Taipei versus in Beijing, whether we're talking to a diplomat, whether we're in a public forum. If you're the CEO of Marriott talking in Beijing, it would be a different answer, right? So it becomes very nuanced, even simple questions like that. And this is where, again, they experiment with ChatGPT, and that query, the output from DeepSeek may be different from Gemini and ChatGPT and so on. And likewise, there are, you need to think about problems for which there are right answers. Again, another slightly facetious comment. A couple of years ago, or a few years ago, I used to say, somebody may ask, who's the premier of China, right? A tongue-in-cheek answer would have been even yes, right? It was Premier who then. But there is a correct answer now. It's Xi Jinping. But who should be the president, right? Now that sort of brings the fluid intelligence. Who should be the president in the US, or who should be the candidate on the left or the right and so on. So, that brings out some thinking. And then we talked about the prediction markets. There are certain events for which there will be an answer tomorrow, right? A correct answer. What's the market going to do tomorrow? A sporting event tomorrow, what will the result be, and so on. So some of these answers have correct answers, will have correct answers, or will always be nuanced, and then facts versus opinions and so on. So they take some socially responsible questions, should guns be banned, right? Should they be more regulated? What are some of the answers from the chat GPT? What's the literature saying about it? There's a lot of, if you do data analysis, people will find correlations. Does correlation imply causation and so on? So in terms of knowledge, we actually now talk about the 3 C's of knowledge. One is creation. So a lot of us, even I am not creating new knowledge when we do programs like this. And what I'm showing you today is the second C. It's curating knowledge, right? A lot of other folks have done some interesting things. We are saying no need to reinvent the wheel. Here is some cool stuff. But then communicate it, right? So you want to create some things, you want to curate some other things, and then you want to do some storytelling. You want to communicate it fluently via video, via other things. Let me go back to my, so there's a lot of other things here on the OpenAI website, prompting for educators, prompting for organization and automation, career prep, collaborating with AI. So I encourage you to take a look at the OpenAI Academy. It'll be useful for both the adults and the kids here. This is sort of brand new. I had it up on my screen, so I said maybe we'll go through that, how agents are unlocking the next wave of AI-driven businesses, right? 88% of agentic AI early adopters are now seeing a positive ROI. We've also seen some MIT studies where they say 95% of projects are not generating value and so on. So it's sort of very nuanced. 90% of startups actually fail, but that doesn't mean, fail fast, right? And frugal innovation. So you want to try some things that are low-hanging fruits. This is from Google itself. AI agents are now being deployed at scale. Gen AI continues to deliver returns. So these are all publicly available. But agentic stuff is very interesting because, we all have automobile insurance and we see ads and we say, oh, maybe I can switch. But what's the friction there? You have to enter all the information. Interest rates probably are going to be dropping over the next few months. Some of you may be looking at a refinance, right? What if you had an agent that was monitoring the interest rate and you had already permissioned it to give it value of your home, what you're looking for, and so on? So there could be that agent to agent negotiation happening. When it finds a match, it'll say, hey, I found this new automobile policy for you. I found this new refinance opportunity for you. Just click yes and so on. And then you can take the next step. So a lot of the paperwork, information elicitation, friction can be avoided by doing these things. So that's where some of the agentic stuff comes in. This is, I teach that AI and emerging economies class. We talk about policy, geopolitics, Gen AI and sustainability. I have somebody from Google who is head of data science sustainability there, guest lecturing. We get people from like Gates Foundation, role of digital public goods. So they literally are the ones funding and pushing digital public infrastructure and so on. So you can see the curriculum here, sort of version of this would be what some of the students, a lot of these are suited to high school projects as well. AI targeting of humanitarian aid. I don't have the case study in front of me, but somebody, she's going to be an incoming faculty member at University of California, San Diego, got a Harvard degree, then got a PhD at Berkeley. What Emily Eichen did was she and her advisor at Berkeley, they got contracted by the government of Togo. Remember, we were sending stimulus checks to folks. I think my older daughter got one who didn't deserve a stimulus check. She already had a job. And then there were some checks going to mailboxes in Virginia while these folks were in Florida, right? The snowbirds and so on. So even if they needed it, they couldn't get the checks. So what the government of Togo did was very modest checks or money they wanted to transfer. Can you do remote sensing? Can you take pictures of the poor cantons? And then within a canton, you've got to identify the poor neighborhoods, right? So if a phone is on 20 hours, maybe it's being shared by the family, right? And they can tell from the remote sensing the roads aren't perfectly paved, the roof is not perfect, and so on. So that recognizes the poor neighborhoods, and then the phone metadata recognizes the poor families within the poor canton, and then using mobile money, which is sort of big in Africa, they were able to transfer money to the needy and so on. And that particular project actually made the cover of Nature, one of the top journals, and so on. So that's an example of a socially responsible use case using contemporary AI, if you will. This is a conference that will be doing some things in Singapore, AI and finance. So I again had that up on my screen there. There's a lot of data available from the World Bank. So we'll have students sort of take a look at that. This is Algeria. You can compare, mentioning Togo. It'll have to, yeah, there we go. There's a little bit of and this is around the, um, um, GDP is fairly modest, but they seem to have had some growth from 2020 to 2021 due to sort of policies like that. It's fairly small country, right? Of 8 million people or so, and so on. Um, Likewise, data is available now with a lot of these scholarly papers. A lot of the scientists are being encouraged to put the data out there, code out there, so it can be replicated, right? So people have found that a lot of 60% of even famous papers and so on, and we've had issues like the cold fusion, even around COVID times. We had papers being retracted and so on. So and those are good habits now. People will create GitHub archives, put their code there, and for high school students, it's good to get their work checked. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it starts developing good habits for the future, right? They're creating something that's reusable. That's the whole open source movement. Somebody creates something and then folks build on top of that and so on. So we start encouraging things like that. There's a lot of data available. This is somebody wanted to do different shocks and crises. So I had this up on my screen. Globalization introduces some shocks, either due to tariffs or tax regimes or oil prices suddenly increasing, war breaking out. And then with the crises, you can do more of a um, controlled classification because there are only paucity of data, right? There was only one COVID that we've seen in our lifetime, so you have to do like an event study or something a little different. So there are databases. I didn't know about this. Actually, I found this data set today when I was and I used GPT-5, I think, to find this. I said there are some students looking at shock events. Can you suggest some data sources? And it came up with this. I haven't actually looked at it. So these are again examples of things that we would go through. This is sort of interesting. This is a new take on the trolley problem, if you've heard of it. So in the self-driving world now, it's becoming very important. A self-driving car has to suddenly brake. If it swerves, it may kill um, some. If it doesn't swerve, I think it's kills the athletes. Maybe these are more normal people. How do you value different children, older people, athletes, non-athletes, and so on. So you can set up different scenarios and have people vote on it. And what people have found, this also is a Nature paper. There are cultural differences. So Brazilians versus Indian folks versus folks in the US think about these trade-offs, value of life of certain people very differently and so on. But these have to be programmed in, right? So this is the issue that the AI designers are now grappling with. Sometimes self-driving cars will have accidents, and we do that as um, a reflex action, right? We sort of turn away from certain things and so on. So very interesting things going on. These are databases. I know the Federal Reserve is in focus. There's a lot of GDP, CPI numbers, I think, came out this morning. It was high a couple of years ago, right? And then it didn't quite bottom out at 2%. We're still running close to 3 and so on. Very easy to download. There are APIs available, and then these are tools. Any sort of data science project is a triad. It's data, domain knowledge, and tools, right? So we will give them exposure to all of these three. Domain knowledge tends to be if it's something quotidian, they already know, they're buying things. If it's something sort of health related, in some cases, I've hooked them up with other experts and so on. I have some domain knowledge in financial services, e-commerce, anything to do with bits. I sort of divide the world into atoms, bits, and cells, if you will. So bits have a bit more expertise in, but bits are driving now innovation in atoms and cells, right? It increases the velocity of innovation. It's measure twice, cut once, right? So that's where, you can do some digital twins. You can simulate an aircraft engine. You can simulate health process. You can simulate sort of a restaurant. You can simulate like a TSA queue. So some very interesting things they could be doing using some packages that are already out there. So let me sort of stop. There might be some other things I can pull up here, but I think you wanted me to stop around 9:40, 9:45, a little early, so we can take a few more questions, Christina.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ganesh. That was so brilliant.